Yo, friends, what's up? And welcome back to another episode of the Relationship School's Smart Couple Podcast, episode number 128. If you're new, this podcast is all about growth and development in the context of intimate, long-term relationships. That's right. We assert that having a great long-term relationship requires growing and developing yourself. That includes growing yourself up from a wounded boy or girl into an adult who can listen well and communicate effectively. And when you get triggered, you can come back around and work through the challenge. That's essentially what we're doing here, all right? And if you're returning, psyched to have you here again. Welcome back. Thanks a lot for your reviews. Feel free to leave a review if you haven't, as a kind thank you. And for your listenership, for your comments, for your feedback, for your questions, and just the ongoing support. We have a thriving community here, and one of the places we hang out is on Facebook in the Smart Couple Facebook group, and you can join that for free to go to jasongaddis.com/smartcouplegroup, and we'll include that link in the show notes, and you can just click on it and ask to join. And there's thousands of people in there like you who want to have or are having good relationships and like to offer feedback, like to receive feedback. And yeah, it's a good crew of people, okay? Now, sometimes we have guests on the show, sometimes we don't. Sometimes it's just me riffing, jamming, venting, and pontificating about partnership. And other times my wife hangs out with me here. Other times I get to hang out with really cool neuroscientists, geeks, and relationship experts, couples, and the like. So my aim is to offer you high quality relationship advice that is really pointed, confronting, good, street level, non-bullshit, and just helpful. All right, that's what I'm here to do and offer you. Okay, so today is awesome because I have a great guest, and this guy calls himself a human connection specialist, Mark Groves. He lives up in Canada in the Vancouver area. Calls himself an emotional translator, writer, speaker, and coach. And this is a little bio from Mark. It says, learning how to connect with others is the single greatest predictor of success in every facet of our lives. I agree. So I set out to discover the secrets of those who thrive in love and life so I could become one. My research became my life, and I live everything I learn and write about. Through my work, I help people understand their emotional matrix and how to master themselves and their words. I take what you think you want, find out what you really want, and give you the tools to achieve your goals. I love that. In this interview, you're going to notice that last sentence there is really true. Mark is really into how your thoughts affect your reality. And he's got a couple of great tips and reframes that I think you're going to find really useful in your own relationships. And if you're single and you're trying to find the one, and you're shooting yourself, let's say, or you are in a relationship and you are engaged, but you're not feeling it. You've got that uh-oh feeling, as my kids and I call it. If you've got that uh-oh feeling, we explore Mark's personal experience with his uh-oh feeling when he broke off an engagement and what it really took for him to say no and what that was about for him. As always, I try to dig into my guests' personal lives to learn from their firsthand experience of how they went through a challenging time. Okay. Mark is not married. He's in a relationship, no kids yet. Seems like that's on the radar and the horizon for him. And this guy has tons of wisdom to drop in this episode, which I think you're going to appreciate. Okay, let's get right to it. Here's Mark Groves. And as always, I've got a good action step for you at the very end. So please make sure to listen to that. All right, folks, here we go. Welcome to the show, Human Connection Specialist, Mark Groves.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man. Psyched to finally meet you here virtually.
You as well. It's funny that we actually call it, it's so many people that I know now are virtual friends that I consider good friends.
Yeah, it's wild. I know for two connection geeks too, it's like connecting virtually. Here we are.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah. All right, man. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're up to in the world.
So, Mark Groves, my name. I'm Man, to put down, I had to write my purpose down in 140 characters once, and I remember what cruised out was I I help people connect better with themselves so they can then connect better with others.
Mm,
And in that concept that our relation, that idea, how we do one thing is how we do everything. Everyone sort of says that saying
yeah.
now, and it is quite relatable and true in that, like, our relationship to food, our bodies, other people, even our purpose, even to money, they're also reflective of our relationship to ourselves. And so my work sort of captures people in any one of those. I'm certainly not like an expert at your relationship to money, but it always comes back to something internally.
Hmm.
And that's what I love, is just being able to help people navigate to this space to find more connection with other people. At the end of the day, that's what makes life worth it. That's what we're here for, is to love and to be loved. And we're not taught how to do that, hence relationship schools like yours.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, and I'm
totally.
and
And
I'm oh yeah, I'm also in a relationship to
okay.
my partner. His name is Kylie. I do not have kids. I'm not married. I am formally engaged a long time ago,
Okay.
but obviously that didn't
Didn't pan out.
that didn't work forward.
Yeah. And are you do speaking engagements, you write, you coach, right?
Yeah, so I'll like hit it up any way I can. Whatever's sort of passionate for me. I have a desire to live in the world where whatever sort of terrifies me, I lean towards.
Nice.
Whatever's like, not the terrify as in, if I'm scared of jumping off a cliff, I'm not about to do that. But the idea that it means it's uncomfortable, it means I've never done it before. And I spent so much of my life living in what was comfortable and living in the space of certainty, that the moment I stepped out and started writing about relationships, I've just fell in love with the unknown. I fell in love with
Mm.
leaning into this space of intuition, or gut, or purpose, or whatever the word is that people have for it.
Yeah, cool. Rewind the tapes a little bit for us to either childhood or adolescence or young adulthood in terms of how you got into jamming and geeking out on relationships and being interested in that.
As a kid, I think, my dad especially is quite a communicator, like very charismatic. And, I think just through socialization, just learned that skill from him. And so communication and the ability to do that always came very naturally to me. And I went into sales when I was in college. And then when I left college, I was in sales. And and then when I was 27, I got engaged, back to that point. And I didn't really want to be. And so when I got engaged, I
Mm.
sort of woke up to this moment of being like, how did I get here? Like, is this the right person? Why do I feel so off about this? And that led me into this huge exploration of, how do you know if they're the one? And I went down this
Yeah.
rabbit hole, and I ended the relationship 3 months later, and I felt 1,000,000 pounds lift off my shoulders. But the one thing that I really couldn't get over was, how do you do something that you don't want to do? Like, why would I spend all that money to do something that in my heart I actually didn't want to do?
Mm.
And it's not because, I was sort of like blessed because she's an amazing woman, and she was beautiful. She is beautiful, smart, athletic. She was all the things on the list, which made that feeling so much harder to comprehend.
Yeah, totally.
So that is where it started, because I saw, like, hey, I'm super good at sales. Like, I was successful at sales. I was killing it. And why was I good at that? But yet I lacked the ability, air quotes, to communicate in love. And it showed me that it was just a matter of choice. Like, I had the skill set talking at work. Why couldn't I express, you could share how excited you are about ice cream or how disappointed you are. You can do the same with, your partner or about your life, but we don't, because the ice cream is not going to dump you, like there's a
Right.
different relation.
Yeah.
And
Good point.
that just led me down a real deep rabbit hole of like, what's the science behind relationships? Why do they work? Why don't they? I was much more, I guess, linear based at that time. So I was really interested in the science. So I read everything I could get my hands on. I was super interested in studies. And just over 10 years, I just started to see like everybody else was wondering what I was wondering. Most people didn't know what the F they were doing.
Yeah.
We were all just like doing the best we can. And I've always loved that quote from Eric Fromm where he says, there's no other form of thing that we fail at so much as love that we wouldn't bother to learn about. And
Yeah.
here
I
all of
know. It's
us are,
mind boggling.
isn't it? Like
Yeah.
we're all in some essence. I hate the word failing at relationship because I don't believe that's true. Like when a relationship ends, it's not a failure. And we call it a failure, and that just causes us to place our self-worth in that word. I think that relationships ending are really a beautiful beginning, but they're also an opportunity to learn from the completion of that
Mm.
experience.
Hmm. Yeah. Nice. Will you come back to, I want to ask you a question about the engagement just
Yeah.
because a lot of people I'm guessing can relate there, where they're either walking down the aisle or maybe it's well before and they're seeing the wedding planning stack up financially and they're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And I think I have the right person. It's all supposed to feel right, but something feels really off. Like, how did you have the courage to like end that and pull the trigger and be like, wait a minute, and back out of the whole thing? Because a lot of people actually go through with it because they're like, I don't want to deal with the drama that it's going to cause my family and friends and everybody thinks we're a good fit and blah, blah, blah. Like how help us through that? Like what happened for you?
Whew. Yeah, man, that's getting shivers because that was a big one. So the first part I would say is always honor that feeling. It doesn't mean you have to go or you have to stay. It's just honor the feeling first and be able to have that open dialogue with your partner on some level.
Mm-hmm.
Like it gave me anxiety to think about planning the wedding and picking a date. And I told my partner that. Um, and I just needed time to process what that was because the challenge is I was also waking up to these narratives that I'd been taught, like get married by 27, have kids by 30. I
Mm-hmm.
was living this story that wasn't my story. And that's really where the misalignment came, is that I was in this story that wasn't mine.
Yeah.
And that's why it felt so incongruent. Now, in hindsight, there's so many lessons for me. And I think for anyone in that moment is to begin to ask yourself questions like, where is it in my past that I've left when things are about to get more serious?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is that a pattern of my behavior? Am I able to actually receive love? Like I look back now and I see that I never actually really let that girl love me.
Mm.
Like that in hindsight. Now I wouldn't go back and change it because my life's freaking awesome. But
Yeah.
I needed that experience to realize that I never really let her into my heart. And there was a subconscious reason for that. I didn't want to get hurt. And so sometimes we just have this knowing that it's just not right. And other times we need to explore where that anxiety comes from. What happened the last time we let someone love us? Did they die? Did they break our heart? Did our parent leave? There's so many
Sure.
things to unpack. And one that kept ringing in my head too, that was making me stay, which you could argue I was making me stay, but this is different.
Yeah.
Was that men are afraid of commitment. So I was like trying to intellectualize this fear of commitment. Like, was this a fear of commitment, or was I actually not into this, or was it both?
Exactly, dude. That's a wrestling match inside. Yeah.
And that was tough because I had all these ideas of like, my family's going to be disappointed in me. My friends are going to be like, why would you let her go? Her friends are going to be pissed at me, which usually always happens. So you can't escape that one. And then, because they're protecting their friend. And the one part that I had talked to a friend about it, and she was like, any major decision in my life, I think about what would I decide if it affected no one?
Mm.
I just got to choose,
I like that.
and it didn't hurt people, and it didn't. And she's like, and that's what I decide because that's my truth. And I thought that was a very compelling reason for me. I think the part that there's two things. One was the idea that men are afraid of commitment, and then I acted upon it, and everyone said, you are actually just afraid of commitment. And I was like, so you want emotional men, and now that I'm acting on my emotion, you tell me my emotion's not valid.
Uh-huh.
Like, I don't actually know it. That pissed me off.
For sure.
And I think the other part was I went down an exploration and I asked a lot of questions to people who had been engaged, who'd been married. And one lady asked me 3 questions. One was, if she left you tomorrow, would you be okay? And I was like, yep, I'd be okay. And then the second one was, can you imagine what the altar would look like, whatever it is, waiting for her? And I was like, no, that gave me anxiety. And the third question was, could someone else love her better? And that's the one that one kicked me right in the nuts, because
Yeah.
it showed me the responsibility I had to my own truth, not for just me,
Hmm.
but that I was being selfish in my fear, and I wasn't allowing this tremendous woman to be loved at the level she deserved. And I think that question is so beautiful, because if you're in a relationship and you want to love them better, that's a good check-in to be like, how are you showing up,
Yeah.
to life, to your partner, to yourself? And for me, I didn't want to. And that's just my truth. It
Right.
was,
Just
I
where you're
didn't
at.
want to. So I ended it. And it was probably the most difficult conversation. Like, we had just bought a house together. We had, like, everything was weighing against that choice. Um, but, it's like, are you going to sell out your truth for money? Are you going to sell out your
Uh-huh.
truth for, like, fuck that.
Yeah.
Like, so many of us sell out for safety and security when we're abandoning ourselves in that moment, and I don't know that the soul likes that. I think that's where a lot
Yeah.
of,
That's supposed to be painful, right?
right, like, if staying is painful, that's always a good question. Like, which one's abandoning you, staying or going? It's a way
Great.
to look at it.
So, listener, there's a lot of nuggets in that, everything Mark just shared. So, definitely rewind that part, that last 10 minutes or so, because I'm like, there's multiple points that a person in your shoes, I think, is going to benefit tremendously. So, thanks for that wisdom there.
Oh, my heart goes out to those people in that spot, because they have to fight so many systemic messages
Yeah.
of, like, you need to get married, you need to do this, if you're single, you're broken. Like, the greatest thing you can change in your life is not placing your self-worth in your relationship status. Like that,
Hmm.
if you believe that when relationships end, you're a failure, you're fucked. And, like, if someone walks out the door, they don't take you with them. Like, they don't.
Uh-huh.
And that is, if you believe that your self-worth is at your beck and call, you choose. And that is so empowering. And, I used to place my self-worth in my lovability in someone choosing me. And by me choosing me in that moment, I took it back. I took back the power. It was like probably one of the first times in my life since I was a kid that I did that. And I think in life we're presented with relationship experience to rejoin ourselves, to meet ourselves, to face decisions that we've never made. That, I think often it's the voice that we didn't have when we had parents who, said things to us that hurt, or, we, like, find the voice through love. I think that's the gift of relationship, even though it hurts a lot of the time.
Yeah, totally.
you know.
Cool. There's a couple different ways I want to go. So I'm going to see if I can circle back to what you just said about not placing our self-worth in someone else's hands, and walk me. So you don't get married. You decide to be, honor all the feelings that are coming up. You dug in. What I sort of heard that was one step on the path that helped you learn more about relationships. What happened next in terms of your own journey about, like, were you rebellious against marriage? Because I didn't hear
Oh
anything
yeah.
in there about that, because marriage still is such a loaded thing for people. So where did you go next with marriage, and then zoom out, and where are you at now with marriage, given all the, marriage is still really challenging for people, but there's still a big should that we should get married.
Yeah, great question. So yeah, I was pissed when I got out of that engagement. I was pissed because no one taught me, like, literally no one taught me about love.
Yeah.
Like, I observed my parents who have a tremendous relationship. So I think I got a bit of a leg up from that perspective. I'm lucky. My dad's a great communicator, which is a great message for a man to receive at in my generation, our generation. So I got a leg up there, but I got to tell you, I was pissed. I was
Mhm.
like, fuck this. Like, someone told me I had to get married. I had to do this bullshit. I've been getting this message since I went to Catholic school as a kid. Like, I'm not supposed to have sex before marriage. I'm not supposed to, fuck everything. Like, I was pissed.
Yeah.
And so that's when I started to separate from the system in a way, because I started to separate from my subconscious narratives and I started to identify them. Like, why does someone spend, like 40 grand on a house and a ring on down payments and rings when they don't want to, right? Like, that
That's
was the
insane.
part where I was pissed at everyone else, but really I was mad at myself, to be like, how did you not pay attention?
Right.
And that's where I started to uncover, which was, it's still an ongoing journey, but it was really like, I didn't have the language for that then. I didn't really know it was my subconscious narratives. And so I think, like, for the listener, a subconscious narrative is sort of like, if you're, raised in a home where divorce is shamed, you'll think divorce is not okay.
Uh-huh.
But then you might get divorced and you place your self-worth in that message that you received. That's just a message from your church, your community, your society, whatever. And
Yep.
so we have, 95% of what we do, subconscious, 70% of those beliefs are negative. So you have to be quite mindful of the passive messages that you have in your head of, like, and a good way to understand this is, I hear this all the time. I date assholes, like, all I can find is assholes. And I'm like, well, do you want a great relationship? And of course, everyone goes, yeah, I want a great relationship. And you go, but then why are you dating assholes? And they're like, well, those are the people I find. And I'm like, well, you can't believe you deserve a great relationship then. And they're like, no, but I want one. And I'm like, no, you
Yeah.
don't. Because your underlying core belief is that you don't deserve one. And so you can see that underneath that is the subconscious belief that's actually driving the choice.
Yep.
Because, like, I don't like Brussels sprouts. I don't eat them anymore. That's an easy conscious thought. But subconsciously, this person still chooses the Brussels sprout version of humans, but doesn't want them. And so that's where we have to start to close that
Yeah.
gap.
It's wild, right? Yep.
It's so wild. And when we can start to see that we're choosing from that subconscious space, it's really important. And so for me, the journey was in understanding marriage. I read Marriage: A History by Stephanie Kuntz, which is a great book. And, I, for the first time in my life, learned that marriage was not based on love. Marriage originally was founded to merge tribes, to keep rich people rich, to keep poor people poor. You married someone at the farm next door, you better hope you got a hottie, like,
Uh-huh.
just to build a bigger farm. And, love was not found in marriage. We found love in affairs, in secret relationships, even in public relationships. In many cultures, it's common to have a side dish, for
Yep.
both men and women, but more
Yep.
so for men from a patriarchal sense. And, I think that helped me rationalize it, because then I went, here's this system that's based on, I really felt I'd been lied to. I remember the first talk I gave, I said, not every relationship's meant to last forever. And everyone was like, fuck that.
Yeah.
I was like, see, like, I know that's true because not all of them do. Like, imagine if you just accepted that truth. If you
Then you would
accept
beat
that.
yourself up, right? Because you couldn't do it. For some people.
Exactly. And why are we okay with, when we're in grade 8, our relationship fails? Because most people say to me, well, that was grade 9. Because I'll say, well, why aren't you still with the first relationship you ever had then, if they're all supposed to last forever? They go, well, I was young. I was like, well, why are you easier on yourself when you're young? Like, why do you give yourself that little space to make a mistake? But when you're 25, you're supposed to have it all figured out. There's bullshit, because most of us haven't read anything by 25. And, the science shows very clearly that the older you get married, the more successful your relationship is. That makes sense, because I remember me at 21, glad no one married me. But
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the marriage for me now. When someone says I don't believe in marriage, I say redefine it, because it's a word, and you choose to agree upon. All the words are is two people agreeing upon a definition. And that's why most people, when they get married, they don't talk about the agreements that they define marriage as. And so if you're not talking about them, they exist anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And they often mismatch. And so I'm more proactive about it, in that, like, just redefine it. Find a definition of marriage that works for you. The system supports marriage, so you can either play the system or get played by it. You don't have to resent marriage. It's not marriage's fault that there's divorces. It's bad relationships. The problem isn't divorce or marriage. It's relationships.
Yeah.
And we project it on this system. But really, like, for me, I think the greatest shift you can make is changing your expectation for a relationship to last forever. and turning it into an intention. And the reason this shifts so much is that when it's an expectation, we now avoid the conversations that could end it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when it's an
Good point. Yep.
expectation, we place our self-worth in it. Like, I have to make this relationship last forever. And we need it to last because that's how we identify.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've made women's value be, are they married? Do they have kids? We've made men's value that too. But I just think relationship and holding one together, most of it rests on a female generally. I'm talking obviously heteronormative.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the context of that, when we shift it to an intention, it changes and join with that. Am I being the best version of myself? Am I showing up, sharing my feelings, being vulnerable, being honest? Am I doing that every day? Like, my measure of success isn't are Kylie and I together. It's, am I showing up as the best version of me?
Today.
And that means communicating.
Yeah.
Like, that means sharing shit that's scary. Like, that means being a great partner. Even that sometimes means saying, you know, I need some time to myself. And when that becomes an intention, it takes the pressure off my partner to have to be with me forever.
Yeah,
Like,
I love
I
it.
don't want Kai to have to be with me. I want her to choose to be with me.
Right?
It's a very different. And if she leaves, I still love her. You know, like, my love for her is not conditional on the basis that she stays or goes.
Yeah.
You know, like, I always want her truth to be what her truth is. I don't want to force and keep her in a cage. That's not fucking love. That's fear.
Yeah. That's fair. So I love it. So listener, change your expectation to intention, perhaps, or aspiration. Now, Mark, do you see yourself getting married someday?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, I love the concept of it. I love the declaration of it. I love the celebration. But I could just as easily not, because my relationship, how it's defined and how I show up, is not representative by the word marriage. It's representative by my commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And my commitment, as I said before, is to be my best self and to show up as the best version of me, and to build. I do want to build a family and to have kids, and, you know, like, that's, you know, what my partner, that's what I want with her. And I see her as the mother of my children. And, you know, and I think that's a beautiful experience. Do I need marriage to contain that? No, I don't. Because to me, marriage is just a word that we slap on a relationship. And so your relationship doesn't change because you get married. It still is the same, you know. And I think a lot of us choose marriage out of fear. Osho has this great saying from his book, Love, Freedom, and Aloneness, which is fabulous. He's a bit of a shit disturber, but his quote is, why do we need marriage? It's like painting a red rose red or putting legs on a snake. If you need marriage, there must be some fear associated with it. And I thought that your love is not total. And everybody says that. And I thought I really related to that, because I see so many people getting married or having a kid when things are bad. And, you know, I think the worst thing we can do is that, because it's not true. It doesn't give you security, you know, like, oh, now that we're married, I don't
Not
have
anymore.
I
No.
don't have to give him a blowjob anymore. It's like, actually, you do still want to be intimate. I don't understand why people don't want, like, to me, but people get married on very different agreements, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you're kind of calling out the sort of interjects and all the bullshit that people find themselves in around marriage.
Yeah, which is all like, and, you know, like, having a kid when things are bad, fuck that. That's so selfish. Like, the job of a child is not to keep you together. That's fucking selfish. And then we project onto the child that responsibility, like,
Dude,
subconsciously,
a
which
lot
is
of our listeners probably grew up in families like that.
oh man,
Got to
that
keep mom
drives
and
me
dad
nuts.
together. Got to be a good boy and good girl here.
Yeah, especially when we have parents who stay together till the kids are 18. When the kids find that out, they're like, you stayed together for me, you dick. You know, like, they already know that your
Yeah,
relationship's over, and just
yeah,
end it. You know, the science is very clear that people from high conflict marriages, kids do much better. And the people do much better. You know, divorce doesn't affect kids, bad parents do.
yeah.
You know, that's like, broken people don't come from broken homes. Broken people come from broken people.
That's right. So you have a big emphasis on the sort of quote broken person, or helping people value themselves more. What are some of the, I guess, big issues that you see as you travel and coach people And then just give us one or two, and how do we work with those? How can the listener here deal? Because they're probably facing or feeling one of these.
What are some of the big issues?
I mean,
I'd say,
you're naming a lot here, but I'm just wondering if you see, if you have a common that trickled to the top.
I mean, I certainly hear a lot that people have a hard time meeting people. I hear like, oh, I can't, how do I find someone who thinks that way? How do I find someone like that? And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have to put ourselves in positions where it's likely to meet the type of person that we're thinking about. I often hear that from people who then say it's so hard to meet people. I'm like, bullshit. Like, it's hard to meet people from your couch. But, it's also when you have the belief that it's hard to meet people, how do you go into every interaction at
Right.
Starbucks? Like, this person's not going to be nice. Like, yeah, it's not even actually hard to start a conversation. You should practice with people you're not scared of not talking to. Like, I could stand in line beside an 80-year-old dude at Starbucks and be like, hey, have you ever had these almonds? And we just started a conversation, and
Yeah.
that's how simple it is to meet people, and I think when we believe it's hard to meet people who think that way or who are that way, we have to
Mm-hmm.
go to conferences, like I've met so many best friends from conferences, like,
Oh, totally.
yeah, you have to start to surround yourself with people who think the way you want to think and are the way you want to be. I don't think there's any greater, because I don't think there's hacks in life. I think that's bullshit. That word is
No
just,
hacks.
there are no hacks in
Ooh,
life.
I like it. Calling out the hacks.
Yeah, there's no hacks. There's no shortcuts to anything. There are long cuts. There's shit that we'll do that will take us
Oh,
forever to
definitely.
get, right?
I can
But
speak to that.
yeah, like I've taken lots of those to my own development and relationships was an extremely long cut.
Yeah.
But there's no shortcuts, like you don't just get something, like sometimes I'll have people be like, I just want your and Kai's relationship. I'm like, behind our relationship is a lot of very challenging conversations that have scared the shit out of me. Like
Yeah.
it's not like this just like pictures show. That's why I'm very clear when I post a picture that there's stuff behind the picture that you might be projecting doesn't exist, but I show up and do the fucking work,
Yeah.
and just like you have to put yourself in places that scare you. You have to step towards your edge. And I think the greatest part of that is you can't ask for anyone to be something you're not. Like I'll talk to someone, they're like, I want someone with great values and I want someone who does this. And they'll be in a relationship that they hate. And I'll be like, well, why aren't you leaving the relationship? Well, I'll just wait till I meet someone. What do you think that fucking person's going to give you the time of day with the choices you're making? Like you have to
Right.
live the type of life you want of the type of person that you want. Like that's just because we can smell bullshit. All people can smell bullshit. And
Yeah.
like you want a high quality person, you have to be one. And I think there's just a level of responsibility that we have to take in a relationship for ourselves.
Yeah. And you're talking now, I mean, this could apply obviously to dating or your marriage or you're in a relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, what I love about what you're talking about that I'm getting that you keep saying in a number of different ways, which is helpful, is this whole unconscious, subconscious patterning around our beliefs. So if I'm walking into a Starbucks or a restaurant and I already have it that it's going to go poorly, that's the world I'm creating, right? So I hear you saying, let's change our mindset and also go be around people who are maybe a little further along that are living in a way that I want to live.
Yeah, because we almost like adapt to their choices. We'll like, because it's being modeled by them. If they're great communicators, they'll communicate with us. So we'll just naturally
Yeah.
learn through them just by observation, too much like as a child observing our parents, and that's really, you can always find out what someone is going to achieve based on what they believe, because you'll never exceed what you believe. Like
Yeah.
that's just true. So if you have a subconscious belief that all relationships end because all you saw was divorce around you as a kid, you'll likely sabotage your
Yeah.
relationships.
That's the reality you're creating. Yeah.
Yeah, and you'll likely choose people that relationships will end with. You'll likely communicate in a way that ends relationships. So we have to get to the deeper subconscious space because we are all navigating towards stories that we believe to be true. In psychology, they call it confirmation bias. We pick up information that confirms what we believe. Look how
Yeah.
strong beliefs are. Just pay attention to religious people. Like people are willing to die for what they believe. People are willing to abandon their family because they married someone of a different race or a different religion or a different gender. Like that's such bullshit. To me, that's like the essence of conditional love. But it's they believe so deeply that they don't even consciously understand that they're choosing to abandon their child because of a choice they made when
Hmm.
their child really needs them in that moment most. and it goes against all their inherent beliefs. So, like all of that stuff starts to make sense too, because what we start to see, and I think one of the most beautiful gifts you can give to your parent is to see them as a child of their parent instead of as just your parent,
Hmm.
because you start to see them as part of a system too. And you start
Nice.
to see that they inherited their own shit. And, when you start to look at epigenetics and emotional transference, you could see in rat studies, mouse studies, but also human studies, that we inherit emotional wounds. We inherit the pain of our parents. And, you only have to, because you could just see how they communicate. And if there's no communication intervention at school or whatever, even a mentor or anyone, you will never know beyond that capability.
Even if you try, right?
Exactly. And so if you've never seen conflict managed successfully and turned into intimacy, how do you ever know how to get there?
You don't.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like our responsibility. Our responsibility, it cannot be your fault that we are the way we are. It can be our parents' fault that our dad or mom were an alcoholic, or we got abused, and those can all be absolute realities, and we can be the victim of that experience. And I think that in a way, although I'll never repeat this in any other area of life, I think in a way, being a victim of that experience is empowering because it's not our fault. But the paradoxical thing that needs to happen there is we now need to take responsibility for it. Regardless of it, whether it's our fault or not, we still have to take responsibility for it.
Okay, so let me
Yeah.
zero in there because you're bringing up a really important point about personal responsibility. So that you're already leading into it, but the general question is, how do you tell the listener here, how do they go from being a victim to a person who's a little more empowered? Like, what are two simple things they can do today to get out of their victim mindset and be more responsible?
Wow, man, it takes a level of compassion for self to say, I'm actually responsible for the things that have happened in my life. It takes, because the hard part there is the moment you take responsibility for everything in your life, you now are taking responsibility for hurting people and hurting yourself. And that requires a large amount of compassion for yourself, because now you're like, I fucked up. Like, I remember the moment I took responsibility, I was like, I've been a dick. I've been a bad communicator. I've hurt people. I've used people. Like, I've flaked. I've ghosted. I've done so many things. And that's why I write about them now, because it removes the shame of them for me to
Hmm.
say, like, here's how I fucked up. Here's my most unlovable parts. And here's what I learned about them.
What's the difference? Hold on. What's the difference between that and blaming myself? Because I can hear some people saying, yeah, but I already like beat up on myself. I know you're not saying that, but like, what do you
Yeah.
say to that person?
Well, instead of going to that space of blaming, there's a difference between saying, I'm an idiot, I'm a dick, and saying, I have been, I've felt, because as soon as you say I am, you become, right? Like, so we have
Hmm.
to be very mindful of using those words. I hear people say all the time, I'm a bad communicator. As soon as you say that, you don't have to be, And so when we identify as anything, we'll become it. And so it's like with emotion. When someone says I'm angry, I say, no, transform that to I feel, because then it becomes information, and you are not the anger. You are just feeling angry. And so say like, well, it's my fault. I've done all these things. If we live in that space of victimhood, of now like living in that space of shame, we're not taking responsibility. We're using the pain to stay stuck, and we're using it to not have to change. And that's the interesting thing about humans is that idea that we only change when things get so bad or we learn so much. Like it's like
Truth.
right? Like we get to this fucking point where we've hurt so many people, we've hurt ourselves, and we either have this choice to rise or we don't. And I could tell you from personal experience that it doesn't get better. The rock bottom gets worse. And, it's like you can wake up from, like blacking out the night before, making a stupid decision. You could wake up in the middle of the day while you're having a coffee when it doesn't hurt, or you can wait till you get a cosmic 2x4 to the side of the head
Yeah.
because you like got someone pregnant, or you did, or you got pregnant, or like you got married and then you had a kid, and then you woke up to the fact that you knew 10 years ago you didn't want to do, like, and I think that's the part that is like, when are you going to choose to, like, for some reason as humans, we've decided it has to be painful to take responsibility. It doesn't have to.
Yeah.
Although as a
I'm a
person
little
who
dense
lives,
though. That's yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's
hey,
demeaning.
like, that's not out of judgment. That's out of, don't go where I've been,
Yeah, exactly.
like, just do it now. If you have a voice that says, I want more, I crave more, I'm capable of more. Like, my level of responsibility is, am I operating at my highest level of knowledge? That's how I live now. Am I operating at my highest level of knowledge? So it's not okay for me to make a mistake now and do it again, because it becomes a choice. And so that's like, as soon as I learn something, I grow. As soon as I've hurt someone inadvertently,
Yeah.
I apologize. And then I'm like, how can I grow from this? How did I contribute to this outcome? And there's so much freedom in that.
Oh my
There's
God,
so
totally.
much,
Yeah. Okay.
so much.
So back to a baby step. What's another little baby step someone could do? Because that might be a jump for some people. What would be like a baby step towards from victim to responsibility? Another one.
I think it also is looking at your experiences in your life. And one exercise that's really powerful is to write out all of the moments that are sticky. Like, I think we all have these emotional experiences. And, like, a big one for me was when I was in grade 8. I was chubby and I was at this party, and this guy named Mike, I can remember his name,
Of
was sitting
course.
at a picnic table with him. And I knew him from like 3, 4 years before. I don't even know why I got chubby. I think I was eating like Slurpees and I stopped playing. I was playing soccer before that. And so I just had this, I played hockey, which you'd think would keep me fitter, but nope, didn't. And anyways, I was young. I didn't understand diet. I didn't understand food. I didn't, we didn't have any education 10, 20 years ago on food. We just ate plastic.
Yeah.
And this kid said to me, "Oh, you've become quite a porker."
Wow.
And I remember that, like, light of day, like,
Yeah.
just ingrained in my cells. And I wrote, when I did all this exercise, I went through every single moment: breakups, pain, things I've done, things I've hurt, people I've hurt, how I've hurt myself, how I've been out of integrity, where I fucked up. And then I wrote, then on the right column, I wrote, what did I learn from it? How did it invite me to grow?
Money. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we're
And
talking.
what that does
Yeah.
is it takes you from being the victim of your pain to being, although it sounds so cheesy, the victor of, no, it's too cheesy. So
I
it,
like
it,
it.
take,
Let's
it
go with
takes
it.
you from this space of this painful moment that hurts to that contributed to the growth of the person I am today. And
Mhm.
what that does is it gives your past purpose. And if you don't give your past purpose, no matter how painful the experience, like, I've been cheated on. That one taught me that I had bad boundaries. That one taught me that I was a bad communicator. That one taught me that I didn't call her ass out to show up better. Like, there's ways I contributed to that. And it sucked to say that at the, if you had asked me right after I got cheated on, I probably would have been like, fuck you.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, yeah, there's so much wisdom in all of these experiences. And that's why we're here on this planet. We're here
Yeah.
to grow from experience. You were not born, if you were born with a perfect set of skills, bless you, but we're not. And like, who told us that we have to do everything perfect and we can't fail? And if your relationships end, you're a failure. Like, I hate that message about divorce, because half of people who get married get divorced. And so they're all failures. Fuck that. They're all soldiers. And to me, like, they've all learned and expanded. Hopefully they've learned.
Hopefully.
Sometimes they don't. And I think that's so much more empowering. And so I think if you go through that exercise, you learn how to take, and as soon as something bad happens, you can get to that space right away. You don't even need the sheet. It's just a matter of practice and mindset.
Yeah, I love it. I do this as well. It's super empowering.
Isn't
So
it
thanks
so
for,
great?
I really like the reframe too, about what did it teach you? Just
Mhm.
that simple. What did it teach me? What did it help
From,
me do in my life?
yeah, like, from why did it happen to me to how did it happen for me?
Yeah.
Just that simple shift is a shift of mindset. And I think for people who are in the victim mentality, I think it's really important to understand that you are not your mind. Like, the thoughts you have are not you. Your brain, if you can start to believe and understand that your brain is a computer, you can see that it's a tool that you use. It's not you. Like,
Hmm.
you're in charge of your brain, but most of us are the slave of our brain. And so the moment you can see that you're in charge of it, you can see that you can actually choose the thoughts. And that's when you can say, okay, well, I have been a victim. Ownership. How do I change that? okay. And it's like knowing that the neural pathways that you have, however old you are, have been forging for however old you are. So it's so easy for us to think I'm a bad person. I'm not a good human. And that's just a pathway that's familiar. And so it actually takes catching the I'm not a good human and being like, wait, that thought's not contributing to who I want to be.
Yeah.
Let's try that again. I'm an amazing human. I love how I show up. That change of thought creates a new road, new neural pathway, old one dies, neuroplasticity. It's just takes consistent effort and work.
Yeah. I'm with you. Cool. So as we wind down here, Mark, you're in a current relationship, and Kylie, is that you said?
Yeah.
So you and Kylie, take us to a moment that was challenging, and just how you got through it, and maybe a favorite tool that got you through it.
I think one of the things I love most about our relationship is that we've made the commitment to always clear things in the connection between us. And so what I mean by that is I really think that all humans have this sort of like artery that connects them in a way. And when we don't talk about things, they always get talked about. Like that's the thing that people need to understand is it's not okay to not talk about stuff because you're going to communicate that stuff in how you text and how you pass the salts. You know, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to talk about it anyways.
Yeah.
And so we need to communicate it verbally so it's more effective, so it can be dealt with. And one thing that we use a lot, which is just being like probably just the most simple and beautiful thing, is to just start a conversation with, hey, do you have a moment? Yeah. Can I clear something with you? And then, you know, we share with each other what the thing is. And, you know, just through my work, you know, there's not a single thing that I ask people to do that I don't do. You know, I think that's really
Mm-hmm.
important. That's probably why I started my work, was to hold myself accountable. But,
I'm
you know,
so
to be
with you.
able to,
Yep.
yeah, is to be able to understand that behind any frustration, any anger is always an unmet emotional need. So, you know, it's not so much as, you know, we can be angry that our partner left the toothpaste cap off the toothpaste, and that could be happening all the time. But it's not the toothpaste cap on the toothpaste that matters. That's the content. That's where we get stuck. We get stuck in the content. But it's what did leaving the toothpaste cap off the toothpaste mean to us?
Mm-hmm.
That you don't listen. And that makes me feel unimportant, that I'm not a priority to you. And I know it sounds like, but it's the toothpaste cap. It can't be that big of a deal. But it's the message it sends. And when we can start to get to uncovering that emotional need, we can then satisfy that need. So, you know, like when Kai and I have conversations like, hey, I need to clear this thing with you. Here's what's going on for me. And I'm like, okay, what did you need? Like, what do you need from that?
Yeah.
Like, I need to feel like more of a priority. I need to feel more connected to you. You know, like one, I think I was, you know, I was getting in the habit of checking my phone before I went to bed. And she was like, hey, you know, like that's getting in the way of us connecting. Can we come up with a different ritual before bed that makes it so our phones are not in our bed? And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Good one.
yeah, that's great. Because she wasn't feeling important when I was on my phone and we're like going to bed. And it's my connection to her is more important than my connection to my phone, which, you know,
Which
just
in some relationships is not the case.
yeah, and I think we use phones and just social media as a distraction in order to avoid connection a lot of the time,
Absolutely.
especially if there's pain in that connection, you know, so knowing how to clear that so we don't escape to our phones.
Yeah, I always say that we set our lives up to demonstrate how much intimacy we can tolerate. So if we work
Mm.
all the time or we stare at our phones all the time, it's like, yeah, that's about the level of intimacy that you can hang with.
Yeah, isn't that I love that idea that our external world will always match our internal world. And I've never thought of it from being a demonstration of, uh, I guess, tolerability of intimacy. You know, I certainly see that probably the most common thing I see with people, which I probably should have said earlier, but hey, we're here now, is that we don't generally have a problem giving love. You know, like most people will get lost in the I give and give and give. I show up for all these people and they never show up for me. That's common.
Yep.
Common. I hear
Very
that
true.
all the
Yep.
time. But it's like, when was the last time you let someone love you? When was the last time you actually let someone do something nice for you? When was the last time you chose a partner who could love you? Most of the time, these people choose people who are unavailable, or the moment their partner tries to love them, they cut, you know, push them away. and they are constantly creating drama, and I think it's like, are we allowing ourselves to receive love? And I only know that through my own,
Hmm.
like I got hurt in a relationship when I was young, and I didn't ever let someone pass that point of pain, like where I knew for certain I could probably get hurt again. They never got past there till today, which is a beautiful experience.
Totally. Nice work, dude. Courageous.
Whew, right? Letting
Yeah.
people in, man. I think that's the thing about love, is you have to understand that you will only be able to love people as deeply as you're willing to be hurt by them.
It's such a good one, man. Yeah. This is very true in my own life.
Mhm.
A lot of blocks. And then finally, like the terror of opening my
Right,
heart, you
right.
know?
It's like, I love you. Here it is.
Ah! Yeah.
Totally. And like one of the most, because not every story has to end with pain, and we're so stuck on the old story that we don't write new ones. And
Yeah.
we just have the past keep repeating itself because we are so afraid to let go of that story and fall into this cascade of love, which feels like you're sliding down a hill,
Yeah.
and you can't grip onto anything, which, hey, maybe that's beautiful. Maybe that's the good part. I think so.
Cool. Well, Mark, I really loving what you're dropping here, and just your way, and how you're helping us understand love better, and so much about mindset, right? And the beliefs that we carry around about love and ourselves. So thanks for being a champion for that.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on the show, and just like verbal pour out.
I love it.
It's
Yeah.
fun to have these conversations. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. You and I will stay up late sometime and keep going.
I agree.
Cool. So where can people find you and how do they get in touch with you?
So you can hit me up on Instagram at Create the Love, and also on Twitter. It's under the same Create the Love. And then I have a Facebook page you can message me on. You can also go to my website, which is markgroves.tv, like television. And then my email is connect@markgroves.tv. And you can just fire me a message. Happy to connect with people.
All right, cool. We'll include all of that in the show notes. And is there anything coming up? I know you do events or speaking engagements that people, if they're in your area, they can tune into you.
I have an events page on my Facebook as well as my website. I have an event coming up in Chicago right away next Wednesday on the 31st of May. And then I have stuff coming in the fall, but just not totally planned yet. But I got some fun stuff coming up.
All right, cool. Well, maybe we'll have you back someday.
Sweet. Thanks, man.
Okay, dude. Thanks a lot. And awesome hanging out with you.
You too, my friend.
Cool.
Thanks.